seen the biggest improvement from spring just to 3 practices in on the offense side?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things that we emphasized in the offseason was basically everything with the exception of execution we emphasized, but really just hustling and playing hard. And that's kind of one thing that we've talked about is, just being together, being a unit, and playing as hard as freaking possible. And you'll see it a lot. I think the biggest thing is when you start to see some of the receivers and, the running backs where they have explosive plays is really everyone else outside of the ball carrier hustling their absolute tail off to go get an extra block. And I think that's the biggest thing because that's everything that we can control. That has nothing to do with what the defense is doing. That's everything in our power that we are just playing absolutely through the whistle. And we've been very impressed. I think we still have a lot of work to do with that. But from practice 1 from spring ball all the way now to practice 3 of fall camp, I think that's been the biggest thing that we are emphasizing and the biggest thing that they've really stepped up to the table.
In terms of the progression, is everything in place in terms of like the system, kind of like the language, like everything like that, kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, obviously when we got here in spring camp, everything was brand new. Everything was brand new for every single player. And, the interesting part, we still have players from the transfer portal come in, whether it be 6 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. So there is a little bit of a learning curve for some players, but for the most part, our offense was intact in spring camp. So we got to have those practices where we learn the language, we learn all the expectations and all that sort of stuff. So now the biggest thing in the offseason that we kind of did was starting back from ground one, starting back from day one. And so the cool thing about this is day one in fall camp wasn't really day one for us. Although we had an install and we had the plays that we wanted to run, realistically, where our players are at right now is that we could have ran any play in the playbook.
Relationship-wise among the guys, how beneficial was the summer with so many new faces in the spring to get to know each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. Like I said, the first thing I said was that we're stressing just being it together, right, and playing for each other. So having those relationships, and really offensively speaking, a lot of our players were here since spring camp, so that's the biggest thing, right? Starting to understand the why for everyone on the team, not just understanding your why, but understanding the why for the player next to you. So that's a huge piece of it, right? Playing hard, not only for yourself, but for your brothers and your teammates. And that's the stuff, like you just said, that we've absolutely been emphasizing big time.
What are some of the things you want to see, like Dylan and the receiver group do when they're working out of structure, and how do you kind of work on that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes for all quarterbacks, not just Dylan. I think the big thing is, honestly, like the scramble drill. And I think that stuff, like when you get outside the pocket and you get outside of that stuff that's not really structured, so to speak, is it's a little bit of free-for-all. So continue to work our rules of, how we want to attack the scramble drills and how we want to attack plays that really become off script. Because if you think about in football, like there's only so many plays where you have a perfect pocket, the quarterback's able to sit in there, right, with a nice base and throw the ball on time to everybody. And that obviously goes to the back end, the receivers, where that all pairs up. So when you dial it back, there's probably, realistically, I don't know the percentage, but there's probably half the plays where you just have a perfect play that is run that the defense allows and that the offense has. So that's a huge piece of it, is kind of having that off-script mentality and just kind of game people that show up on game and make plays.
What is your impressions of the running back group, and it's like a trio of guys with a little bit of experience there?
Yeah, the running back room is great. I think the biggest thing about the running back room is that they practice hard, right? They bring it and they practice hard. Running back is they take a lot of hits, and you see in the NFL their shelf life it's less than every other year per position. So with that being said, running backs are going to get the ball, right? It's not one guy who has the show. So having a room of depth is absolutely critical for this offense.
What do you want in your backs in your scheme?
I think the biggest thing is we want versatile backs. We don't want a group of backs that can all do one thing. That's a position where you can manipulate and move around. And if you have backs that can kind of learn the offense from the concept, where they know the pass game, they know the run game, they have to know protections, and obviously ball security is huge. But having running backs that can go a little piece of almost every position, that's huge, because that's kind of a position where you move around, you can kind of create matchups and that sort of stuff.
The offensive line obviously did get a few new guys in, but how important has it been to have that group that has so many returners from this program?
Yeah. I mean, in my eyes, that's the most important position on the team, right? It's the only position where you're having 5 guys working together. There isn't a lot of stats that define what they do. And it is truly 5 guys working together. Like, it is the epitome of what a team is all about. And like we stressed in the beginning, it's all about being together. Well, that position group, that's where it starts. And if you don't have that position group that is actually showing that and leading that by example, it's really hard to get everyone else to buy in from an offensive philosophy. So that is a big, big piece of it. And I think that group, right, they have bought in immensely, right? They practice hard, and that's stuff we have to continue to do from everybody, day 4, day 5, day 6, to continue to have that mentality that every practice is the most important practice that we could ever have. But it all starts with that group, hands down.
And when it's this early into preseason camp, what kind of expectations are you setting from the guys when they're still kind of getting up to speed and getting back into it?
Yeah, it all goes back to that first bullet point that I said, right? The stuff that we can control is working our absolute tail off and literally treating every play independently. And we kind of have the mentality from an offensive standpoint is kind of 1-0. And basically what that is we're treating every play like it is the last play on earth. That is the most important play that we could possibly have. It's the most important thing that we could be doing right at that given time. So our expectations, we're going to mess up a few things from the execution standpoint. We're going to mess up a few formations, motions, whatever the case may be. But making sure that when we are out there and the ball is snapped, we are giving everything we have through the whistle.
Have there been any players so far that maybe have caught your eye a little bit more than what you had seen in the spring from them? Or even new guys coming in?
Honestly, it's still new, but I think everyone, right? I think the offensive line, that's kind of where it started. I think they've taken a big leadership role. There's some receivers in there as well. The running back room is deep, which I think is huge. And then quarterback room as well, right? We have multiple people that can play. And then also the tight end group, to be honest with you, that's kind of something in my eyes where they've grown a lot, right? They have the ability to do, at a very high level, they have the ability to do a lot of different things. So I think that group has really taken, some steps, and I think everyone as a team. But obviously this is practice 3. I think we just need to keep pushing it forward, and we'll see in a few more days.
What have you seen from Breon Penny early on?
Good. He's been very good. He's a receiver. He's a bigger receiver. He's obviously taller. He's bigger. So he's kind of more of that physical presence. He's a guy that can go up and get the football. But he's also a good route runner as well. So I think that's the big thing. And if you watch on his film, previously, one of the biggest things is he blocks, right? And he comes down with a different type of mentality. So obviously today was our first day of uppers. But as we start to put on the pads, that's stuff that he can really bring to the table on top of just his physical presence.